You're live. You think you're live. You hope you're live. Okay, this was kind of a spur of the moment video. I don't expect it'll go very long. I had been watching more out of curiosity than I guess true necessity some videos about how to do this, how to do that, like because I had talked about this in my self-help books video last week or whatever, that there's a kind of a difference between certain books and then how-to books. So hopefully this is more of a how-to video where you'll get some actual useful tips. A lot of those videos, I was watching another video where it was a criticism, and the basic premise, I kind of agreed with. That a lot of these things are very bullet pointy, and so they might be overgeneralizations, which may or may not be helpful. So I had watched some by a particular video creator. I don't know why he just started popping up in my feed. I wasn't searching for that content, but some of it looked interesting enough that as someone who was been more focused on screenwriting but might want to go back to prose more and literature and that kind of thing, I thought, well, okay, I'll give myself a little refresher course or a pep talk or whatever, if I decide to go in that direction in the next couple of weeks or months or whatever. And so the criticism video, I don't have any real reason to delve into that too much, but the inspiration video, obviously his videos get plenty of views, which I would assume attract mostly newbie younger writers. So hopefully some newer younger writers will find this, but this is definitely geared toward maybe college or after college, because when you're in school you have kind of classes with built-in readers. You might not like most of the people in the class, you might not get along with them, you might not like any of their writing, but they still may or may not have valuable insight. When you get out of that environment, it becomes a lot more difficult to find people who will even read any of your stuff. You might have a friend who reads it, but they are not very literary, and they just say it's good. We've all been there, right? Well, what's good? Is it really good? So in terms of those bullet point videos, I would say that the aspiring writers with actual skills will mostly navigate their way around that bullet point logic and find a way to make the chapter work anyway when they're building. In my experience, trying to be kind of a mentor, I guess, most can't seem to follow any advice, no matter how good, because they all think they're going to reinvent the wheel for success or something now. And I, of course, also have to question, as just a person in our society, is writing even, still, much going to be a thing going forward in the traditional forms that, that I should even worry about it, my own work and your work, whoever you are, but books are still going to print for now, whether many of them are very good or not anyway. I mean, I haven't finished a lot of the classics yet, much less worry about contemporary fiction as much. But anyway, I hadn't seen, I had only seen some of those videos recently, and I didn't watch all of them or all the way through, even the ones that I clicked on, especially the particular episodes that were being discussed. So I'm not going to delve into the comments about that here right now too much. Yeah, I mean, as far as those bullet videos go, I like the ones where they have chapter titles, so I can skip ahead and not listen to their whole bit each time. So I apologize also that I don't have chapter headings here, but this isn't also really a bullet point. 8 ways to find the best writers group ever, or something like. There's, again, that would just be silly. Either you're going to be able to find quality people, or you're not, and you might have to find them online or something else. Let's see. But anyway, getting to, but in the meat of the video, the actual bullet points, I think a lot of these concepts are bandied about more in amateur writing groups now, or more recently than when I was kind of starting out, or, testing the waters. But I like I said, I imagine that less and less aspiring writers are finding or joining these kind of groups in person either anymore. I was in one that had, like zero structure when I was first in my early 20s, and we all just sort of blundered along, but they weren't clueless that, one gal was actually getting published at the time, and I can't recall her last name, so I don't know whatever came of it. I don't know, what the book was called, or I never got to read it, because at the same time as she was getting published, she was moving to New York to be I don't know if she was going to NYU grad school or something along those lines or not, but for whatever reason, she was moving to Brooklyn, and so never saw her again, and don't know what happened with her book. So that group, once she left, this other talented woman left kind of after for separate reasons, and so the whole thing just kind of fell apart. And that was unfortunate, but they were all overworked older women with day jobs, and then they had brought it. Well, since they brought in me, they wanted it to be a women's group initially, and then they kind of let me in because they saw that I was serious about the writing thing more than I was a guy, hounding after them or being interested in, just hanging out or whatever. It was like, no, he's actually writing a lot of stuff, and they actually liked reading my writing, but they'd get annoyed because, they could parse out their, 5 pages a week or whatever you want to say. And whereas I was like, still college age or whatever, and plenty of time on my hands. And of course, a lot of it, I can't even read it now. It's terrible, but it was still prolific, at least. So then fast forward 12 years later, I had stumbled on, quite by accident, a similar group, but they were much less academic people. And the kind of glue that held them together was they had a leader. There was an much older woman, like retired teacher kind of thing. And she had, before the internet, kind of really, well, the internet already existed, but, it wasn't like this YouTube kind of platforms and things where you can really be more interactive. She had memorized some book of these kinds of bullet point writing advice, chapter strategies and such. And so she would sound them, she would sound all knowledgeable when she'd hand you back your thing the next week. And, she'd praise the good parts and suggest work on this and that. And she was very careful to never be, hypercritical. She knew there was a couple people in the group that would probably, do that anyway. And it wasn't never be blunt or never be honest group, but they were trying to be polite, to not scare away, the real amateur types or whatever, which is fine, I guess. But, none of them were writing anything of really, compelling quality, despite all of these kind of reaffirmations of these rules and structure ideas and things. And quite frankly, I think mostly a lot of them were just drinking wine on, a Wednesday evening to spend time together instead of doing, the paint by numbers thing in a boutique down the street, because that cost $35 a session and didn't fit their pipe dream. They probably did that once in a while too, but And that was about when those things were starting to get popular. So yeah, I mean, just like just watching this other video that just reminded me. So here's your funny anecdote. One of the old guys, he had written the most unintentionally hilarious book beginning. That was it was mostly an attempt at James Bond or like Raiders of the Lost Ark, but really written from the perspective of a retiree trying to plan a vacation to see his children in Florida or something instead of a well-funded jet set super spy. It was all about like how he got the rental car from Budget instead of Hertz, and he had company plastic so he could make that happen, and and blah instead of I don't know traveler's checks I guess or something, and he made sure to always pack an extra V-neck T-shirt in his carry-on just in case he got sweaty on the plane in coach on his way to the you know find the translation of the ancient Latin or whatever, all this kind of thing. It just my friends and I had quite a laugh at his expense in our spare time, and I kind of wish I had kept a copy of it instead of returning it with my notes so I could have it for reference now. But of course, I wouldn't want to read you and just to ridicule his thing either too much. But it would be somewhat helpful, I think, to really identify. But again, this isn't really a video about how to write books. This is more a video about how to find, beta readers and that kind of thing. And I have not like I said, been entirely successful with that. Here's my joke. On the original video, it was about how to write women, and I didn't comment on it because somebody had already left the Jack Nicholson quote from the movie about how writing women and beat me to the punch. So as good as it gets for real, for those of you who know, right? So yeah, like I said, you might have some luck, like I said, online. I guess in Hollywood, I mean, to go back to screenwriting, and I included this in that playlist too. Basically, there's a lot of reader services, and you have to really pay for the better ones. Probably upward of at least $500 for a script. And I don't know if they will touch fiction. And even then, I guess you have to vet who you're giving that money to before you even commit to that, to know if you're going to get good feedback or not, which is why these free writers groups, of course, are advantageous, because they may not give you the best feedback, kind of same as your school course, but at least you're getting enough feedback from different people that you can kind of filter, hopefully, what's useful and what's not useful. And they're not going to write it for you anyway. So, and whether or not, a publisher is going to even look at it is, that's down the road. So we're not even going to go into that. So yeah, like I said, yeah, it's obviously easier if you're in a college town, because you will have older students, returning students, that kind of thing. Or if you are connected to a junior college, taking a class for, elective non-credit or whatever, just as a returning student, you can, maybe get some feedback that way. Again, that you're going to be dealing with mostly younger students in that case, and they're not going to be very worldly. They're not going to have a lot of necessarily great advice here and there, but they're also going to be a little more up on the trends, a little more up on the lingo, a little more up on this and that. So, and they might not all be terrible, again, they might be young and talented. And I was always surprised when I would meet, usually there was some kind of gal who would be very articulate and very good at prose, but she wouldn't necessarily be very forthcoming with it. I'd kind of have these kind of intimate moments where, she's showing you her story, and, her roommates don't know she writes, or that kind of thing. And usually it's because they've been doing a diary since they were, 8 years old or something. So they have a lot of attention to detail in there, but it almost never turns in anything more than short stories. So that's one thing, you know, to get over that hump. I don't know what classes they need to take to do that. And because when I took creative writing, the syllabus said, if you took it the second time, you could work on a novel. Well, as soon as I tried to do that, the teacher said no. She said I had to redo all the same assignments as the last time I took the class, and the syllabus was just wrong, and she wasn't going to read any of my stuff that went more than 20 pages or whatever. I was, kind of like, what? And so I wrote a whole novel that semester and got a D or an F or something in the class because I refused to redo all the same, how to write a basic flashback, how to, do a character summation of the blah, 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 all that kind of preliminary stuff that you're supposed to do before you write. It's like, I'm already halfway through the book before I even signed up for the class. I was hoping to get, real feedback and da-da-da. And instead the teacher was like, poo-poo, no, my grading is based on these parameters. And I know your book is, she didn't say it, but I know your book is terrible and I don't care. So she all but said it, literally. And it was kind of funny because I'm going off on a tangent slightly, but, I was one of only 2 returning students from the previous semester. 2 of us took the class twice in a row because we were the serious dudes, and I don't even remember if he finished the class. I don't know. He transferred soon after that, but he must have finished the class. I don't remember. And I think he was more content at that point to just kind of skate and not really work on anything. Memory serves, I just remember spending a lot of time with him, but not always being in the same group where we were reading each other's stuff anymore. So it's kind of like, okay, the one other guy who I know gets it isn't reading my stuff. The teacher's not reading my stuff. It was really frustrating. So a rare case, I suppose, where being in the classroom did me 0 good, even though I had 8 other people in a group that were supposed to be useful. So yeah, pitfalls. Anyway, I got onto that for, like I said, not going to go on and on and on. But so yes, finding, but what I was saying about being in a college town, whereas if you're not in a college town, you might be able to find a book group where they're reading fiction books of, what Oprah playlists or whatever, but they're not necessarily interested in reading your book. And even if they did, they might just be getting together to drink wine on a Wednesday too, which is a joke from plenty of sitcoms already. That's probably pretty accurate. Or, yeah, this is the night when the babysitter has the kids and I have my time to talk about The Notebook or whatever. They're not going to give you any heavy, healthy feedback. So like I said, I don't know if this is super helpful, but, like I said, you're trying to vet your sources. You're trying to find out who, can actually do that, who's willing to do that. Remember, this is a chunk of their time. I mean, I had a teacher who was getting paid and she wouldn't even read my book, much less finding a willing sucker at large. I have found a couple that would read screenplays because screenplays are short and most of my screenplays aren't finished, which means it's only going to take them an hour and a half and they're not going to stress about it. And then they mostly kind of same thing. Well, it was good. I didn't really like this. They don't go overboard with the line edits or anything. So that's kind of what you're up against. You have to just kind of see, and you have to know, usually it takes you a couple of weeks to find out what genre each individual person is writing. So they may not always be doing that genre, but this week they've decided sci-fi is their thing. So, okay, now you got to sit through this thing that you don't really want to read. But, it's fair. It's not, even if they're terrible, it's fair to read their thing and give them, accurate advice. I mean, I think people were kind of upset with me for telling the old guy, why it's bad, but if he wants to be a better writer, if he's really in this for that reason, then he needs to know that super spies don't typically fly southwest. Okay, like, just start there. And as a reader, we don't need all that extra information. You can skim a bunch of that, So like I said, this isn't a writing advice video per se, so I'm not going to go overboard. And I'm going to wrap it up because 20 minutes is probably more than long enough, even though I'll probably think of something later that I should have included. And if you have any questions, of course, you can put them in the comments, and maybe you'll think of something I didn't think of, or have some point to make on top of my point that I made, or whatever. And I mean, yeah, I could go on and on about writing classes that I've taken, but most of them were more with a teacher's assistant kind of thing. So it was only one person that I had to get the thing passed, more than kind of a committee. But the committee wasn't giving the grade. Again, the teacher was still reading the stuff in most of the classes. Whereas when you get to a university, the teacher doesn't even know who you are, doesn't care. He gives a lecture, and it's all through the TA. And if your TA is a complete idiot, as I said in one of my videos, then you end up having to do a lot of rewriting to his taste rather than what you thought you were working on. But that's neither here nor there, because, of course, if you don't like your writing group, opt out rather than having a meltdown. So, okay. Like I said, yeah, go ahead and let me know if I totally missed something. Thanks.